In this episode, we're going to be talking about our two head motivations, which are impact givers and strategists. Just a reminder, there are 6 total motivations: relational givers, joyful givers, faithful stewards, compassion givers, impact givers, and strategists. So we're going to be tackling our final 2 here.
And when I think about head givers, I think about creative, intentional, tactical generosity that's thought through, that's planned with a goal in mind. And we see that for both impact givers and strategists, both in kind of different ways.
Our first head motivation is impact givers. And these types of givers really like to see high yield for their giving. They want to see meaningful change occur. Impact givers seek to know that their giving actually makes a difference. They rely on statistics, research, and high quality data because these help us measure the actual impact that a gift can have. Impact givers often think about problems on a big picture level because they really want to get to the root of what's going on. They may be drawn to solutions that help as many people as possible, or maybe helping those most in need of help.
Some of the strengths we see for impact givers, they tend to be deep thinkers, very thoughtful and intentional in their giving, constantly seeking to grow in how they approach the problems of the world. There's often exceptional fruit from their giving, often hundreds or thousands of times the impact of other types of giving. They're also able to increase the effectiveness of other givers as well. Many have relied on the experience of impact givers in order to improve the effectiveness of their own giving. And impact givers tend to be pretty objective thinkers, able to kind of correct for their own bias in how they give and able to see through some of those layers that can often be a little bit more challenging for other types of givers.
The second head motivation is the strategist. And strategists are really motivated by maximizing resource mobilization. They want to see a lot of dollars given. Strategists often have a background in the business world or the marketplace. They're energized by seeing resources get moved from one pocket to the other. And obviously, we can give far more than money, but that tends to be one of the most measurable things that we give. And that's a strong motivator for a strategist. So, just to differentiate between the two head motivations, strategists are really looking to get as many resources in motion as possible. And impact givers want to make sure that they get deployed wisely once they are actually given.
Some of the strengths of strategists, they're often creative and good with numbers. All kinds of interesting creative strategies that can stack many multipliers on dollars that are given when used effectively. They frequently use advanced strategies like donor advised funds, impact investing, or mission driven businesses. And they use a variety of giving tactics, often freeing up significant resources either in their own life or in the lives of others. We've seen numerous strategists who've dedicated their lives to helping mobilize more resources from others who have resources, and some very cool stories of how people are able to really mobilize for the kingdom in that way.
So, once again, let's talk through some of the cautions for our head motivations. So, for our impact givers who want to see a high yield harvest from their generosity, there's a risk of seeing high yield giving as superior and preferable to other expressions of generosity. We also see the temptation to use guilt as a way to motivate others to give more or differently. There's a risk of depersonalizing ministry when they focus too heavily on numbers and statistics. And finally, there's a risk of operating out of a scarcity mindset, a sense that there's only so many dollars that get given, and so we have to maximize the impact for every single dollar, or else it's a waste.
And then we look at strategists who, again, are motivated by mobilizing and deploying as many resources as possible. There can be a risk of overemphasis on dollars given over actual results, just trying to get the dollars out there, but not actually a full awareness of where they're going. there can be a risk of turning generosity into more of a transactional kind of experience without creating room for some strong personal connection as well on a deeper heart level. And there can also be a risk of pride in generosity because dollars are very measurable in the end. And so, just as we can measure the dollars of our own wealth accumulation, there can be a temptation, probably more so for strategists than other motivations, to measure the dollars being deployed out and to take some level of pride in that.
So if you're a head giver and you've seen some of these cautions start to play out in your own life, the good news is there's so much depth in the other motivations that can help round out your experience of generosity. So if you're an impact giver or a strategist, we're so grateful that you're part of the generosity community because you bring critical thinking, effectiveness, and optimization to the table.
And that brings us to the end of our six motivations. I think these six really encapsulate most of the spectrum of generosity that we've seen across hundreds of givers that we've spoken to. And this helps to lay out a little bit of a roadmap for how we can grow. If you are just starting out in your generosity journey, then it might be that only one, maybe two of these really kind of stand out. And that's the door that you have kind of entered through into the world of generosity. And that's an awesome thing. Good news for you, there's so much more to explore. And you're going to see a lot of that over the whole rest of this entire series because we're going to be diving into each of these six motivations in many different ways across the other dimensions of generosity. If you have been deep in the generosity world for decades, then we hope that seeing these six motivations highlights some new areas to explore that maybe you just haven't looked into in great detail in the past. And we hope that spurs you on to a whole new level of generosity than you're at now. And all of this makes the community of generosity stronger. We need joyful givers, relational givers, faithful stewards, compassion givers, impact givers, and strategists. It says in so many different places in the Bible that God has created us in unique ways to strengthen the entire body. And that's what we see playing out here in motivation.
In our final episode in the motivation series, we're going to be talking through some practical ways that we can grow in each of these six areas.